515-414-0059.
That's her number.
What she has listed on her email.
Oh, that probably doesn't on her 51. I'll just send it. I could go to a minion. We're okay.
Or tell my Lisa to release.
I thought she was going to.
Now they should be.
Okay.
Can you guys all hear us?
Can you hear us? Hey, Misty, Charlie and I just figured out about a few minutes ago that I have to recuse myself on item C. So just a heads up. And I'll probably just at the beginning say that I will be, and that you and Charlie will take it from there on that one. But that's the only one, just a heads up. We've gone on a pretty good streak here of like a year where I haven't had to do anything, so. I just wanted to give you a heads up before we got started, so it wasn't a complete shock.
Sounds good.
Everybody RSVP, you know. Probably do it for me.
Am I right in front? We have 7. We're missing
Bob.
and Jeremy. They jump in. We've got a quorum.
But yeah, guys, this one will be a little different. Most of the commission's all on Zoom, so you'll be able to hear them through the speakers and see them up there. Pretty sure we're just gonna get going at 6 on the dot here. I assume red light means we're good, right?
Yeah, it's the opposite of what you would think. So.
All right, trusting everybody can hear me still out there. We're gonna go ahead and call the June 9th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Courtney, can you take a roll call, please?
Yeah. Josh Rabe,
Here.
Misty Soldwich,
Here.
Joe Butler,
Here.
Al Ferris,
He's here.
Al, give thumbs up. Al's here.
Aaron Freeberg,
Here.
Becky Needles,
Here.
Bob Wormsby, Jeremy Preble, and Sarah Ritchie.
Here.
Actually, why don't you call Bob's name again? You know, Bob, are you here? He's showing up as on the screen. He just maybe isn't quite connected yet.
Okay.
All right. Moving on, the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any items to pull from the agenda or that are not okay? All right. If there are no objections to the agenda, I need a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I can make a motion to approve the agenda. This is Sarah Ritchie.
Sarah, do we have a second?
Second.
I heard Bob on that one. All right. No further discussion. All those in favor of approval, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Next month, we're back in the chambers if anybody wants to. Next up on the agenda is the approval of the May 12th, 2020 meeting minutes. I trust everyone's had a chance to review those. Are there any changes, comments, questions on those? All right, hearing and seeing none, I take a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Al, first, do we have a second?
Joe Butler, second.
Joe Butler with a second. All right, all those in favor of approval of the May 12th, 2020 minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Say aye. All right, we'll keep moving. Next item on the agenda, public comments. Is there anybody here about an item that is not on the agenda? I don't believe that is the case. So we will keep moving along. There is also no old business. First item under new business, agenda item 7A, consider recommendation on a request for approval of a final plat for Prairie Glen Plat 2. Charlie?
Yeah, I think the commission will recall last July, we reviewed the preliminary plat of this subdivision. There was a previous preliminary plat that was submitted for this that included 21 lots. The developer added 2 lots along Franklin Avenue there to get a total of 23 lots. The final plat that's been submitted matches the preliminary plat that was approved. We did note on here that grading and utilities have been completed for this subdivision. However, we're still awaiting paving to be completed. As such, we have not done a final inspection on any of the improvements on this subdivision, and we are still awaiting maintenance bonds for the improvements as well. Bringing this plat forward, giving the commission obviously their 4 alternatives. We were recommending, alternative 2, which was to approve the plat with the following condition: that the city council review the recommendation of the commission after all improvements have been inspected by and approved by staff and all maintenance bonds have been secured. So if there's any questions on this one, I would be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Charlie on this one? Is there anybody in the audience on this item? Perfect. There are no questions. There are no comments. As such, if no one has anything, I would entertain a motion.
Joe Butler, I will make a motion that the City of Indianola Planning and Zoning Commission recommend the final plat be approved with conditions as stated by staff, that the City Council review the recommendation of approval after all improvements have been inspected and approved by staff and all maintenance bonds have been secured.
Do we have
I second that. Misty?
All right, we have a first and a second on this motion. Is there any further discussion? All right, Courtney?
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Aye.
Aaron Schubert,
Aye.
Becky Needles,
Aye.
Bob Ormsby,
Aye.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Ray,
Yes.
and Misty Soldwish.
Yes.
All right. The next item up on the agenda is to consider recommendation on request for approval of a final plat for Heritage Hills Plat 5. Charlie, or Plat 10, excuse me.
Say you're half off.
I know, I'll get there.
Commissioner, we recall back in August, you reviewed this preliminary plat, August of 2019. The preliminary plat the final plat that was submitted matches the preliminary plat. Grading, paving, utilities have all been completed for this subdivision. As of the time of publication of this report, we noted that we were scheduled to inspect the improvements on June 5th, which was last Friday. We did do that last Friday morning. We have provided the developer with a punch list of items that need to still be resolved before we accept those improvements. I know Paul Clausen's on the Zoom call here with the engineer on this one. We did receive word from the developer on this that they're working through that punch list hopefully this week, and we'll get all those items completed, at which point then we will re-inspect, and if everything's good to go, we will be fine on that. We have received all the maintenance bonds for this as well. The clerk is holding on to those, just awaiting this to come to council. Similar to the last item, we are recommending approval with the condition that the city council review this after all improvements have been inspected and approved by staff. I did add once all maintenance bonds have been secured as well. But again, I did note that we have received those maintenance bonds already. So if there's any remaining questions on this, I would be happy to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions for Charlie? As he mentioned, the engineer's also on the call if there's any questions there.
This is Paul Clausen with Civil Engineering Consultants, 2486th Street, Urbandale, Iowa, Unit 12. Just want to thank you for your consideration and time tonight, and I'm here and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Paul. All right, guys, last chance. Any questions? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
This is Al Ferris. I would recommend approval of the final plat with the condition that the city council review the recommendation after all improvements have been inspected and approved by the staff. And I don't think we need the part about the security bond.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Bob Ormsby seconds. All right, any further discussion? Courtney?
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Becky Needles,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Rabe,
Yes.
Misty Soldish,
Yes.
Yes.
and Joe Butler.
Yes.
Perfect. Before we get to the next agenda item, I am going to recuse myself as I have a potential financial interest in this item. So Misty is going to take over with Charlie for this item.
Okay. So item 7C is consider recommendation on request for approval of a final plat for Autumn Ridge Plat 3. Charlie?
Yes, this is a 23 lot residential subdivision. Commission will recall back in October of 2018, we reviewed the preliminary plat for this subdivision. Did note that the final plat does match the preliminary plat that was approved. I did go back to the commission meeting from that October of 2018, the commission meeting from October of 2018. There was a few other things I know that were discussed in that meeting. This was prior to my starting here, so I wasn't aware of them. A few things of note would be that we still need the lot tie agreements for lots 20 through 23 with the outlots on that. Another note on the plat too about the geotechnical engineer providing, what was it, lot 20 and 23 are be designed by a geotechnical engineer prior to the issuance of a building permit. And I think that's been covered already, but I'll let the applicant speak on that. And then the other one was the recreational trail. I know was kind of a discussion that came up on this, and we're not seeing that on the final plat either. So with that, I know our recommendation was to approve the final plat with the condition that since we have not reviewed any of the improvements yet on this, and we're still waiting one maintenance bond as well with that, I'll kind of throw it back to the commission and on how we want to proceed on this after the discussion, but we'll have a few options. The options would include obviously bringing it back to the next meeting when some of these other items are on there, or we can just add these as conditions on to the approval to take that forward to council once they have all been satisfied. So with that, if there are any questions on this, I would be happy to answer them.
This is Al Ferris. Charlie, I talked to you about this earlier, and I'm a little confused about the trail. As I recall, at the preliminary plat, part of the conditions were that there be easements for any future trail, particularly on, and I believe it applied to the outlots. And I thought the city council agreed with that when they approved the preliminary plat. Is that what you found out or something different?
So I went back on the, I watched the commission tape here actually just right before the meeting. I watched the council one first. On the council meeting, there was mention that the applicant had satisfied all of the requirements from the conditions that were provided by the commission. And then at the commission level, again, all of those conditions that I read off first, that the lot tie agreements be made with lots 20 through 23 with, essentially tie in lot 20 to outlot W, 21 to outlot X, 22 to outlot Y, and 23 to outlot Z. A note on the plat that the geotechnical engineer design the foundations for lots 20 through 23, and then the recreational trail was on there. There was a lot of discussion at the commission meeting about exactly where that trail goes, if it's on the outlots or if it's on the west side or the east side of the creek and how it crosses the creek and all of that. I don't believe there was ever any final determination on exactly where that went. I think it was kind of left up in the air at that point, as long as we had the easements through there. So again, I'm not showing it. The preliminary plat that we had on file in our office didn't show it either, but I think the preliminary plat that we had on file was the one that was submitted initially, and not any updated one that may have been submitted. So that's where we kind of lost it a little bit there. But again, after you had mentioned that, I went back and watched the meetings or the meetings from then. And yeah, definitely there was some discussion, and the recommendation of the commission was that that recreational trail be provided.
So does that need to be shown on the final plat?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think that was the recommendation on there, and council seemed to adopt that. And I don't know, was there ever a plat that showed the recreational trail on there at all?
Never a discussion on whether it was definitive or not.
From the commission?
Or the council.
Okay.
We couldn't get an answer on whether it was on the east side or the west side of the creek. If it's the east side, it doesn't make any difference on the plat.
Yep.
And if it's on the west side, how do they get to it? Because plat 1 and 2 don't provide for it.
So does anyone else have any questions on that? I'd say from my limited recollection, I don't recall it ever being brought up again, anything being presented to us after that meeting.
Yeah, not to the commission, it wouldn't have been. There would have been one final approval from the council at their next meeting after the commission meeting, but the commission did consider this at 2 meetings. I think there was a lot of outstanding items the first time it was reviewed, which would have been September of 2018. It was remanded back. The applicant fixed most of those. And then in their response from September, asked that the trail be waived, but the commission did not recommend that it be waived. The commission recommended that that easement still be put in place.
Well, I tell you, I'm holding in my hot little hand here the 2008 Trails Master Plan for the city of Indianola. And it shows a trail going through that area. And although it is difficult to tell, it looks as if it's on the west side of the stream there and intended to tie in with the trail that comes down Orchard from the north.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, that was the discussion at that time.
Mm-hmm.
If it was a part of the preliminary plat recommendation from planning and zoning, and if the council approved that, then I think that means it should be shown on the final plat.
And to be quite honest, like I said, there's, Al brought this up to me yesterday, and I do appreciate that, just because I did not have the historical knowledge on this at all. If we want to just keep going on this and maybe have the applicant get up and speak, and then we can have a discussion after this, and maybe kind of let me brainstorm some ideas on how to proceed from here. The only thing I can think of is maybe we need just a little bit more time to kind of look into everything. What I'm a little bit confused on from what I watched was exactly what happened at the council meeting. There was not, and this isn't unique to any council meeting we have. Typically, the council lets the commission really weigh on all these subdivisions and developments that come in, and then they just take the recommendation and go with it. There was limited discussion at that meeting, so I really need to kind of dig into some more of the requirements that were submitted with that, the resolution that was adopted and all of that, and really go from there. So again, if there's any other questions besides the trail, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I would probably defer to the applicant at this point and let them get up and present their side of the application.
Were there any other questions before we had the applicant speak? Okay, so if the applicant could speak, that would be great.
Want me to step up to the mic or can you hear me?
If you could step up to the mic and give your name and address.
I'm Fred Dowie with Autumn Ridge Development. My address is 2160 Terrace Avenue, Winterset. And there's never really been a definitive answer on, first of all, exactly where the trail was going to be, west side or east side, and whether it was realistic or not, how they were going to, how the city would get easements for plats 1 and 2 along the creek to access the trail, because the future trail map of the city also includes plats 1 and 2, which were never, easements were never relinquished on that. And if the trail is going to cross the creek to Orchard, we probably wouldn't have any hesitation to give easements along those outlots, provided the city will guarantee that they're going to put a bridge across the creek to facilitate the trail. If not, we're giving up an easement that people are buying for what? We just like an answer on that.
Yeah, and I can speak to that. I mean, it's not unique for the city to get easements for that. Again, when our trail plan shows that, typical we'll do is we'll try to get easements along the way to see what we can kind of combine. And then when it comes time to actually put the infrastructure in, that's when we'll kind of go figure out exactly how we're going to do everything, how it's going to be funded and whatnot. So I think, again, by providing the easement, we're not asking you to actually put any of the improvements in. That's something that the city would obviously do when there was funding available. But at this time, yeah, we have not designed any concept on the trail, where it would cross, where it would be appropriate to cross or anything like that. So
we would, with that in mind, we would have no resistance to providing easements.
okay.
I mean, we're only talking the lots, what, 20 through 23?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be it on there, and that's
And those would be the ones that would also be required to have the lot tie agreements also with them, because those are the only ones that have outlots to them. Correct?
So yeah, they would be all, I'm trying to pull up the construction documents here because I really wanted to look at the grading that was going through there and just seeing if there was a good place for it. But yeah, I mean, it would be kind of along that creek there. So
Sure.
yeah, 20 through 23, which were the ones that had the lot tie agreements. You're right on that.
Sure. If the commission would see their way to approve this plan with those stipulations and us giving the easements, we would be glad to do that.
Okay.
And I do recall that was kind of what our discussion was back then, that the logistics of it really wasn't like our domain. It was more to honor what the master trail plan was.
Mm-hmm.
To keep that in mind, and that would be other people's issue to take care of in the future, but we at least had that easement in place.
Okay.
So yeah. So is there anyone from the audience that has any questions or comments? So Charlie, would we be entertaining a motion with conditions right now?
So yeah, this one again, I'm comfortable as long as there's agreement with both sides here, that we simply just add the 3 conditions on the final plat, that the lot tie agreements be recorded with the final plat for lots 20 through 23 with the 4 outlots that go with that. That there be a note placed on the lot or in the plat that lots 20 through 23 be designed by a geotechnical engineer prior to issuance of a building permit, and that a recreational trail easement be shown on the plat. And then we can kind of, I think, work with you guys on the documentation of that. Really, all we would need is, I'm assuming from your end, you can show it on the plat, get the legal description of the easement and all that. Is that pretty simple to do?
Yes.
From your standpoint? Okay. And then we'll go from there. So yeah, just all of that. And then obviously we'll inspect everything to prior to it going to council.
We're in agreement.
So, okay. So if you want me to read those conditions again, I'm more than willing to do that. Once you
I think
get
that sounds like. So do we have a motion?
Joe Butler, I'll make a motion. The City of Indianola Planning and Zoning Commission recommends the final plat be approved with conditions that the city council review the recommendation of approval after all improvements have been inspected, approved by staff, and all maintenance bonds have been secured, as well as a trail easement on the lots as discussed, geotechnical requirement for design on lots 20 through 23, and lot tie agreements with the outlots adjacent to lots 20 through 23.
Do we have a second?
Yes, second.
Courtney?
All right, Aaron Freeberg,
Yes.
Becky Needles,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Misty Soldwish,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
and Al Ferris.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Misty. Thank you, guys. Moving along to agenda item 7D, discussion and direction regarding the fiscal year 21 community development work plan. Charlie?
So if you thought you were getting away from the comp plan for a few meetings, you were wrong. We're right back to this again. So as you'll recall during our discussion with the comprehensive plan, one of the discussion points revolved around how we work through all the implementation plans on this, how we get through that, and then how the commission reviews and approves that. So it was decided with that that we would create this work program on the fiscal year to kind of match up with our budget going forward. In the future, I think this is something that we'll probably bring forward a few months earlier just so we can work it into our budget planning process. However, since the comp plan was just adopted back in May, on May 18th by the council, we're bringing this forward just a little bit later than we would think. But going through it all, you'll recall we have 4 different levels of tasks to implement on here. We have an ongoing level, which is pretty self-explanatory. Short term, which is supposed to be done in the next 5 years, medium term, which is to be done 5 to 10 years out, and then long term, which is to be done within the 20-year planning horizon. So focusing on this work program, we really looked at the short-term goals that were on here. You'll see when you go through that on the short-term goals, I put a green box next to the ones that I think that we can really hit next year. Most of those are going to revolve around code updates to our zoning code, or site planning code, or subdivision code. Excuse me, not our subdivision code, actually the proposal that we're looking at right now, we would implement mainly zoning and site plan code updates for next fiscal year, and then subdivision and some other codes would come in the next fiscal year after that one. So most of these again revolve around the zoning code updates. There's a few other things that we've checked off on there. Projects that we've been working on for a year, some of these even more. For example, one of them was to continue to get our new wastewater treatment plant built, and obviously that project has started, so I put a green box on that. But as I noted in here, I think there was 23 green boxes out of the 77 action items that we have. Excuse me, 25 of there, or so 25 of the 77 action items we have identified that we think that we can hit next year. Again, a lot of those mainly through the zoning code updates, but some of them on other items that we are currently working on. So just really wanted to open this up for discussion, kind of get some feedback from the commission. To be honest, if everything looks good on that from the commission and you want to provide a motion that this become our work program, the only thing I would ask is in doing so, let's have a discussion on how often you want to be updated on our progress on this. You know, I would recommend something like maybe a quarterly update that we bring forward. So every 3 months, I just provide a brief memo and say, hey, here's the items that we planned on working this year. Here's where we're at on these items. Here's the ones that we've completed if we've gone that far, just so you're aware of what's going on. And that helps at least keep the commission informed, but at the same time, it does keep me accountable on these as well too, and doesn't let me hit them or let me kind of let them slide down my task list. So if there's any questions on how this is designed, I'd be happy to answer them. If there's any suggestions or changes or anything like that the commission sees, feel free to jump in and let's start the discussion.
Anybody have any questions for Charlie?
Charlie, Joe Butler here. But I appreciate the effort that's put into this organization and the process that you're doing. I think it builds up itself really well. My main question is, how do we as a commission stay informed as things are changing? We're making, you know, recommendations to council, and there may be some things in limbo as things are changing. If we're doing an update quarterly, I just feel like we could potentially get caught with some things that are being changed in the works while we're making recommendations. That makes sense?
Yeah. So, I mean, is your thought that maybe we should do this a little bit more often, maybe a monthly update even, or every other month or something like that?
I was even thinking more to the effect of, like, when you give out your staff report, if there are potentially changes in process while we're making, to bring those up to us just so that we're aware of it and could potentially spur some conversation for things that are currently in process of being updated.
Yep, that's not a problem at all. I mainly suggested quarterly because I didn't want to make this so frequent that everybody kind of lost sight of it. But again, if the commission thinks that we should do a little bit more, and again, I guess from what I hear you saying, Joe, it's not bring every item forward each month and let you know, but just maybe do a high level overview every month and saying, hey, you know, we've made these accomplishments. Here's some things that we're running into. And then maybe on a quarterly or even shorter basis, we actually do a very detailed update. Kind of here's the tasks that we've done on these. You know, we're 80% done through this, 60% done through this one, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking quarterly, I think is totally fine. I was talking more project by project specific. If there is something that is being updated within that quarter and we have a project that comes through that could potentially be impacted by that update, just so that we're aware of what the update is, so that we can be forward in our recommendation for what the update is going to be at the end of the quarter.
Okay.
Charlie, it seems like a big percentage of those to tackle in the first year. Do you think it's kind of disproportionate just because several are getting accomplished with the same task?
Yeah, I mean,
understanding it.
It's been one of the things since I've been here that has been discussed almost ad nauseum about how we need to update our codes, and that was that really came through in our comp plan, and a lot of these implementation strategies are update these codes. Let's get some more modern codes in here. So a lot of these items are really being kind of checked off when we do these code updates, which we have budgeted for. We are actually taking a contract forward with council next Monday to start that process.
Nice.
Hey, Charlie, are you prioritizing them just as they come up, or kind of like, you know, where you're starting and to work your way through them?
You're talking with the 25 that I have here?
Yeah.
So again, most of them are going to be done by a consultant through these code updates. So they're really going to kind of all be done at one time on this code update. The other ones are ones that we have already started on and we're well into doing some stuff on. So, you know, the prioritization, no, there really isn't any on that because most of them, at least that we're doing internally, have already been started. And then the rest of them, you know, we'll probably prioritize a kind of work program through these code updates. So there'll be kind of a, you know, a 5-step process in how we update those with some public involvement and stuff like that. So, but ultimately they're just things that we are going to make sure that the consultant's aware of, hey, we need to make sure that we're covering all of these items in our updates. So does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Charlie on this? I don't think he's excited about the code updates.
I'm glad we have a consultant doing it.
So I guess you would like a motion? How detailed?
Again, you know, I put it on as discussion and direction just because I didn't know what way the commission would want to go. If there's not much feedback and if everybody's good with this, then definitely a motion to approve it would be appropriate.
Do I need a roll call one or is it consent? Okay.
Consent.
All right. So then I would entertain a motion to approve this work plan.
I can make the motion to approve the plan.
Sarah?
I'll second that. This is Misty Soldwish.
All right. All those in favor of approval of the fiscal year 21 community development work plan, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Perfect. Moving along. Are there any comments from commission members on items that have not been on the agenda they'd like to talk about? Okay, Charlie or Courtney, anything you guys are dying to share with us?
Really quick, a few things. Your April 21st meeting, we had a lot of items on that agenda, a very long meeting. So at their last meeting on June 1st, held first consideration of most of the items that we discussed there. They did approve everything on first consideration. They approved the annexation. And then I think there was one preliminary plat that was also on the agenda, and that was approved actually a few weeks ago. So wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that. You'll see on our current projects update, there's quite a few projects on there. There was a few on there that actually did get started this week. I know the People's Bank Administration Building started, and Scooter's Coffee there in the corner of Jefferson in Kentucky got started as well. We're also hitting the final stretch on a few buildings that we have. Ace Hardware is one of them. That should be final here pretty soon. And just looking through the list to see if there's anything else, but really quick update on that. And then on the building permit update, you'll just see last month in May, there were 6 single-family dwelling permits issued. We had a pretty high average valuation on those 6. So still seeing some high values of homes coming in this year so far. And then with that, we're on 31 single family dwellings on the year, which is a little bit above our pace than we were at last year. So if there are any particular questions on any of those reports, I would be happy to answer them.
All right, sounds like everyone's good, Charlie. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. This is supposed to be the quick one, guys.
Can make a motion to adjourn. This is Sarah.
Sarah's first, second.
Bob
second. All right, all those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
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 Same sign. All right, y'all have a blessed night. Take care. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
Aye.
Look at the one person left.
Whatever. How do I close out of it? Where's the exit? Do you watch that show?